Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Mystery Science Theater 3000, episode 1201, Mac and Me. I sort of have an odd relationship with this episode. First episode of the 12th season, shorter season, obviously, by even less than half of the previous one. I was all for that. I was all for them doing newer movies. I am the guy who in several reviews said I sort of wish they'd do a black and white film, but I was all for them doing, especially a big notorious bad movie like Mac and Me. I was kind of like, this is really great for Mystery Science Theater because more people will check them out, more people will get into it, and basically everyone I told that to was more reserved about it. Go, I don't know about them doing so many new movies and things like that. And literally my first reaction was more close to theirs, and everyone who told me that just absolutely loved this episode. And the first time I watched this was on Thanksgiving. I never get to watch much Mystery Science Theater actually on Thanksgiving. I know it's a big Mystery Science Theater day, but there's like Thanksgiving stuff going on, and I have a kid, and I didn't really even get to watch this until like everyone was in bed. And I was a little loaded and full of food and all those things, and I didn't really like it that much. It wasn't so much me being like, show me what you got. I am pretty open to Mystery Science Theater most times. I was disappointed, and then I rewatched it because I really didn't want to review it that way. I mean, I know there are people who just like every episode and don't ever talk shit about the show or anything like that. Not that I talk shit, but I like to, actually review the show. But I felt like that was obviously not the greatest circumstances. A lot had happened that day. I was a little tired. Not negative things, just like a lot of Thanksgiving stuff, I rewatched it and I laughed a lot. And I will say, I think this is kind of closer to what someone like Riff Tracks does. In that, they pick a big notorious bad movie and they do a Riff Tracks about it. And I feel like anytime Riff Tracks does that, they really know they have to bring it. Like you do. It's like when you hear Mystery Science Theater and Mac and Me, you're like, oh, I want to watch that episode. And I originally heard in the Revival League podcast, seems like they didn't it was before we knew it was Mac and Me, that there was a pretty notorious bad movie in the bunch. And Jonah said it was going to be the final one originally, but it's clearly the first one, which I think is a better move because you can see it and sort of move on. When you do a big bad movie, them doing a movie that's already got that reputation, you really do have to bring it. And I don't think this is maybe one of the best episodes. I think it is, though, really funny, really watchable, really fun. Jonah and the boss have great charisma. I don't necessarily think they entirely killed it even the second time, and I laughed a lot, but I thought their charisma was really good. I actually think Jonah did really good in certain parts of kind of explaining what it's like to kind of see this film for the first time, and particularly like the scene where the kid gets shot and stuff. And the first time I had seen Mac and Me before this. I feel like I've seen clips of it more times. I saw it once forever ago in college, then I saw clips of it through various different sources for memes and all sorts of things ever since then. But he really explained how the audience probably feels when you're watching that, and I actually thought he did a really good job both times. That was one of the few parts I was fine with both times I watched this episode. And I think that part, he really kills it with that part. That part he was really great at. But I think particularly that scene that Paul Rudd has played to death on Conan, I don't know if you can really do that anymore. And I don't think what they did with it was nothing. I mean, they kind of just play it as the whole piece, but some of that kind of, I think, didn't think they could do it. I just didn't feel like when they did those scenes, a lot of them were particularly that funny. There are certain things they did really great, like them all trying to sing Doogie Howser at once and none of them were on the same part. That was actually really funny. I noticed they're kind of getting more kind of comfortable with the show and with riffing and with their personalities. Everyone on the cast, from Felicia Day to Patton Oswalt to Jonah, Hampton, and Barron, I think they feel much more comfortable in their places within the show. I feel like they're definitely kind of promoting the binge watching of this. I don't really binge things that much, but I am going to review this entire season, but it feels like this one's really promoting binging, whereas the last season was pretty unwieldy in terms of binging. You could maybe I'll binge a couple episodes or two, it's most people, when they binge, they'll watch 3, 4, 5 episodes or something like that. With Mystery Science Theater, you probably could do 2 or 3, And I feel like they accomplished a lot in that season, but it does feel a little looser. Theater. Glad Invention Exchange is still around. I like the vibe of this one. They still do their casting thing, or it's like this person is that person, and I forget what it was in this, but it was still funny. I don't know who came up with that gag, but it's a great gag. It's definitely the Jonah years joke, basically. It's like this era of Mystery Science Theater is like one of their patented jokes, I believe. I don't remember it in the other seasons. I like that they sort of dropped the whole marriage thing. Like, they had this continuing story and they just got rid of it, which is sort of interesting. I feel like each season maybe has its own vibe. Maybe that's what they're doing with it. This is a good, fun, enjoyable episode. It's a very fun episode, but I didn't really love it. I've never been unsure about a Mystery Science Theater episode. I think I shouldn't have watched it. I was just excited. I was like, well, that's one of the things I'm doing on Thanksgiving is watching the new Mystery Science Theater, and I had to do it, even though I was like, oh, I was play, blah. And it was just like maybe not the greatest idea. I never get into my personal viewing experience. Never really. It interrupts my enjoyment of something, and I feel bad for fucking up this time. It is interesting. I always forget that that's like the Ronald McDonald that was in the ads that's in this. That's in MacMe, which is weird. It is weird also seeing something so new-ish on Mystery Science Theater. It does still feel weird. I hope this does get more people into it, and if this was your episode that got you into the show, don't feel like this jerk who's been watching the show for a very long time should have any say over how you feel about it. I still think it is a good episode. I guess necessarily, you know, it's like when Riff Tracks, I'm not a huge Riff Tracks fan, I should say, but I have listened to them do like Birdemic and The Room and like the big bad movies, and those are like, they are really, really funny. And I think with Mac and Me, I sort of wish they had really like had an all-timer episode with that, just because you have an all-timer bad movie, and I don't know if they really did that, but it was still enjoyable and fun, and a fun, really watchable through line through episode, you know, from the McDonald's skit to the whistling skit and all those things. It's a good start. Reptil Aquellas was a really good opener, and I don't think this is as good of an opener as Reptil Aquellas. They didn't have as much to prove in some regard, but in other ways they almost had more, because you have this all-timer bad movie, and you're the bad movie show. You're the we're making fun of bad movie show. I do think it might have also changed my perception because I had seen this before. I was very well aware of this movie. What I like about Reptil Aquellas or any of the last season, I don't think I'd seen any of those before. Now I'm forgetting. Now they say that, I'm like, did I? I've never really watched too many movies before they end up getting riffed on Mystery Science Theater, and it's kind of like more fun that way, and I felt a little less fun to me. Kind of similar thing when I was younger with Quentin Tarantino. I used to be like excited to pick apart all the references and see all these movies he referenced, and then eventually it came to a point where, like with Django, I'd seen Sergio Corbucci and spaghetti westerns and things, and it was like, you know, I still had fun with that movie, but it wasn't as exciting as it used to be. And this, I would say, is less exciting for me personally as a fan, because one of the things that got me into cinema and weirder cinema and cult cinema is Mystery Science Theater. And seeing something that I've already discovered kind of feels like, okay, but there's like more stuff out there. And even like Hercules movies that, you know, maybe aren't my favorite episodes are still a little more exciting because I get to delve into the kind of weirder B cinema that I necessarily wouldn't. I'm excited for the mockbuster Atlantic Rim after this and all the other ones. It's just funny, I guess, that I wasn't as into this, and I was the one saying, you know, it makes sense because we need to get more people into Mystery Science Theater, and this will really help that, and it's a good idea, and I was all for it in theory, and then I watched it, I became everyone I was playing devil's advocate against, which is funny. I still like this episode. It was still an enjoyable one, but I think given everything it had to live up to, I don't think it did that. I'm not going to say it is an out-and-out disappointment. I still think it's a very funny, enjoyable episode, but it doesn't really live up to kind of the riffing of one of the all-time classic worst movies of all time, and I'm sure most of you will totally hate me for saying that. Anyway, I'm still excited for season 12. I'm excited for them doing just a limited amount of episodes. I think that's probably a better idea, and it's an easier thing for me to accomplish. So in terms of reviewing them all, so I'm thankful for that. I think this was a decent start to a season. This was kind of the big marker of the season. Everyone's like, this is the big worst movie of all time kind of movie within this, but this is their first kind of like really big, like insurmountable thing. I would still like them to do another one like this. I'm not going to dissuade them. I just don't think this necessarily worked out this time, but it's a good way to start the season, because now that you've got this big one over with, we can move on to the rest of it, and I'm very excited for the rest of it. So if you've seen Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode 1201 Mac and Me, and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.